Alright, welcome back everyone. Sorry for a little bit of background sound. Got the dehumidifier going. Might have a little bit of an ambiance to it, but hopefully it's all working well. Looks like audio's going fine. If you guys are listening and you feel like typing in, feel free to do so. We first started off with talking about the world before our time. And we talked about the major villain that afflicted the world, which was the plague that afflicted it for thousands of years. Now we're talking about the players. In the last episode, we talked about one of the more important characters, which was Seraphina. Talked about where she came from, why she's important, and why she's not specifically the main character, but the whole team is. Seraphina had a very important task in front of her. And that task was dire. Even more dire because of the fact that the gods were lied to and her brother had to pay the price. She had many guardians, but one of them was not necessarily better than the rest, but had a almost similar perspective to her. Automatically coming out as both a warrior and a friend. Both appealing to the uniqueness and the similarities with siblings. Today we're going to be talking about Averant, the warrior of the deep. Turn on the music just a little bit. Averant was almost the same age as Seraphina, almost exact. And a lot like Seraphina, she was born into royalty. King, queen as her mother, and her brother that was raised to know that he would eventually become the chosen one. But the differences between them were very vast. Where in Seraphina's aspect, Seraphina was the older one, and her brother put up the lie so he could do the great journey. Averant's brother was actually older. Now, during this time, the story itself gets difficult. Every 100 years, the calm happened. During this time, the calm was few and thin. It wasn't 100 years anymore. It was about 5-10 years between them. The plague was getting restless. It was demanding more. There was very little that the immortals and the gods could do, but then just repeat the process. Averant, again, roughly about the same age, and lived almost the same lifestyle. Living in the world of Averant, a kingdom beneath the waters. Very much like our version of Atlantis. Home to merfolk, but ruled by tritons. Humanoid creatures, blue and purple, with gills and fins, allowing them to breathe and move throughout the water as if it's their natural habitat. Because realistically it is. In this family of the Oceanith, we have ourselves the father, King Averant, and the mother, Altina, the queen. With much time, as much as the Heartwind Kingdom and the Nelitharian Kingdom, there was much differences that the Averant Kingdom had from them. Averant had no reason to fight any of the wars. They had no stake in it. The wars are mostly for land. Above their ocean homeworld. Sorry about that. Looks like we had a random disconnection, but looks like we're all good. They only had small land above their ocean homeworld. That's all I needed, because the ocean was their homeworld. The land was only there for distinguished guests, people that couldn't live in the water. Therefore, they had a small town and a small castle on the mainland to serve as guests, and at least be still a business for non-merfolk. The Averant Kingdom also was home to many. Much like the human kingdom of Heartwind, they did not see fit to... Apologies 1 second, it's just showing that my internet's going a little wonky. Hopefully we are still all good. See fit to exclude anybody out. If you wanted to come onto the main land of Aberys, you were welcome. But it required a certain privilege to go down into the underwater kingdom. You had to be welcomed in. And it had to have been proved by the king and the queen. This was their law. And it kept them safe. Kept them safe from the war that was always ever so happening. And realistically, it kept them safe from the plague. The plague could touch through the water, but that's as far as it could go. The water's vast. The plague can't corrupt it thus far. Small rivers, small lakes, it could take over, but not the ocean as a whole. And therefore, Aberys was safe. But Averys still cared about the world itself. So it still put its stakes in to help Heartwind and Nelithir in the tradition of the Great Journey. Passing on every 100 years to eventually have their own go in, whether it's a guardian or a chosen one. But the things that keep it similar to the other kingdoms is its customary way of nobility. Their only ones that could be nobles were pureblood Tritons. Only royalty would be considered people that were off the main bloodline of the Oceanith. And unfortunately, at this point, it was still in a point of time where a king must be ruling, not a queen. And therefore, there were two things that were not given to this child. She was still treated as the princess and the daughter to her father's eye. But she was the younger, and therefore the next one to become king would be her brother, Velkin de Viren, raised to be not only the future king, but due to the fact of the plague getting more vicious, he had a destiny about him, a calling, to know that he would eventually be the next one to be called forth as a guardian, as a possible chosen one. But no one knew at this point due to the fact that the tradition was changing. No longer 100 years, the plague get more vicious. But he knew it would eventually come. Alir Valerian was the second in line. And since a queen cannot be named to the throne without having a king, it was not ever planned for her to be on the royal seat, but just be the brother to the king whenever he takes his throne. But unfortunately, tragedy struck the family before Velkin could follow his destiny. Unfortunately, the king eventually passed on from a heart attack and left the throne empty. Now, being more determined, Vulcan decided to push this with more of an attitude. Now, just like Seraphina and her brother, Vulcan and Valerian were inseparable. Even though one had the title, one had the right to do this, they were still learning off each other. They were still best of friends. But Valerian knew that in the best case scenario, her brother came back, became the king. She would just stay in Abris. That was her duty. Become the sister of the king. As tradition moved forward and the plague got more vicious, the decision was made to have Abris name their firstborn to be the chosen one. Both surprised but not totally shocked, Vulcan took up his duty, knowing that this was his destiny. Trained since his birth to do this, both to follow into the path of many other chosen before and or guardians, depending on how this would work out, and to come back and take up his right as king. But now he had more incentive. Unfortunately, his father has passed, and now he must know that he must return back to his sister and his mother, back to his people, and rule in his father's stead. Since of the way that the merfolk and all the Abris believed, especially the royals, even if Vulcan did not return, the throne would not belong to Valerian. They didn't believe that a queen, even of noble blood, could rule without having a king. And therefore, if she named herself a husband, he would have the power, and she would not. So, Vulcan went on his great journey with his 5 warriors. Some guardians of Abris, some guardians of Heartwind, some guardians from Nelithir. And they went on a journey. Months passed. Messages were sent back and forth, alerting and messaging the families, including Rin and her mom, about their travels. And they started getting slower and far fewer in between. A mother's love is something that is very aware. Altaina was having nightmares. She kept believing in her dreams that her son would not return. She had consorts that would help her. Valerian would try to consult her, saying that he is a noble warrior and he'll come back. He will come back, he must come back. But somehow the mother knows. Somehow she could see it. Now, Altaina wasn't a witch by any means, but just a mother, just feeling it in her bones, feeling the threat. Now, during this whole time, even though Rin was not meant to be a warrior, not meant to be the queen, she still found it in her bones and in her heart to still train. The captain of the guard, Callus Dune, another Triton, much similar to Seraphina and her honor guard. This one saw fit to believe that gender means nothing when it comes to war. And if the war comes to Abris, everyone must be ready, including his princess. And therefore, he was willing to train her. Now, compared to Seraphina, where that was trained in secret, many people knew that Callus was training Valerian. Not totally in the agreement of her parents, but What harm would it have done? Keep her busy. She wants to learn how to use the trident, the sword, the shield. Then let her. So she trained and she learned. Aberys kept many books of history. And unlike ones of the land worlds, of Nelithir, of Heartwind, and many other countries, these books went back further in time. Whether it was because they were underwater and many historians maybe didn't destroy them or take them, there were books in there that kind of contradicted certain stories of the land, told different facts than what others were told about the Great Journey. But these books were forbidden, not to be read by anybody except for the king and the queen and some of their royal consorts, also with some of the royal nobles themselves, leaving so much information due to some of what is inside. Therefore, whenever a king or queen is named, they are allowed to get access to these books. Eventually, due to time and not hearing anything back from her brother, Rin started feeling the same worry as her mother. She trained, worrying for the worst. And then she decided that training my body is not going to be enough. I must understand what he's doing. Where is he going? So she started reading, making sure that no one else knew what she was reading there, since she was not allowed. But she still did. Some people knew, but she made sure her parents didn't know. She started learning things that the normal populace doesn't know. There was a couple things that she found out, in amazement, and also a scare. The plague itself, still no one knows, but they know a couple facts that only the kings and queens and some nobles know. For some reason, two will never return from every great journey. The plague itself will die, but it takes on a host. She finds out this information, fearing that either her brother has died or possibly has been taken by this plague creature. It adapts, it learns, but she couldn't understand what that meant, how it survived this long. But she started finding out information, started to get worried. The more she read, the more she wondered, what has happened to my brother? Until, a couple weeks later, an envoy came. Two pieces of messages were sent. One is that the Great Journey has failed. Prince Velkin Devirin, the plague is starting to spread further. Almost as a reaction to whatever has just happened, has become disturbed, and which has never happened before. Without giving a moment of rest, all kingdoms are alerted that the calm will resume, or the calm will disengage, and we must immediately start up another great journey. And then the calm resumes. Normally, after the great journey, the plague retreats, rests, hibernates, whatever you would call it, and fall back. But this time it became angry. It started lashing out. So, it was dictated another great journey would happen. This is both a scare but a happiness to some. On one end, this is a change. We have to do another great journey, therefore we must give up another noble's firstborn to resume. But on the other end, you must think, change is good. We've been doing this for thousands of years, and it's only grown bigger. If maybe it's pissed off, we might be doing something right. So another one we will send. But it was deemed from the gods that they must wait 10 years for another great journey to happen. No one knew why, but the gods chose this. You cannot fight them. They are the dictators of this tradition. And so 10 years have passed, with Averant training. Remember, she's not supposed to be a fighter. Her mom, now distraught, constantly sick from her broken heart of both losing her husband and then losing her son. She loses herself into herself. And unfortunately, becomes so devastated without the return that she dies of a broken heart, leaving only Averant as the last of her kin, the last of her noble bloodline, which sends the noble houses into turmoil. On one hand, she can become queen, but can she? The rules of their court says she cannot be named a queen. But there's a loophole. She can be if she takes a husband, and therefore the royal bloodline will resume. But Averant was not an idiot. There was many noble houses that would love to take control of the throne. Therefore, sending out sons, cousins, many that would be manipulated to take her hand and become her king. And she knew that in this current time, taking a king would leave her quiet without any right to only listen to him. This is her bloodline, and she will do with it what she sees fit. Averant was a fighter first, and therefore she decided that she will fight. She'll first fight in revenge, then she'll fight for her throne. So she trained. If she wasn't learning how to use her body in a martial style, she was reading books, understanding everything that's been hidden from this world, understanding what this thing is, as much as the books say, understanding what, now that she can access this royal archive without any restraint, everything that she could know that most others don't. Answering some questions, but more or less keeping her puzzled. Why are there two warriors always kept? Where do they go? What does the plague want with them? And why does the populace not know about this? But more importantly, she tried to research why is it this time? Did something that Valko did, or his guardians do, that pissed it off? Why is it becoming enraged now? Why is it refusing slumber? And she kept owning her skills further. Until it was announced to all three kingdoms that the Heartwind Kingdom would be the next to give up their firstborn to become the noble chosen one. Which partially leads you into Seraphina's story. Feel free to check out the episode before this. Rin had a plan. She, by all means, was not allowed to go this surface road without permission. But there was a council. She was not a king nor a queen. And you'd think that would make it where she could do whatever she wants. But without a king or a queen there, the rights go to this council. Council of nobles that choose until the king is named. And they dictated that she would not leave the kingdom. Her right is to stay here. Her right is to be a wife. This only antagonized her more. The way the blade is hers. And she will follow it through, and she will do what she can to figure out what happened to her brother and get revenge whatever has to be done. This thing killed her family, whether in direct connection or not, and she doesn't care who's going to stop her. For all intents and purposes, she is the royal in charge. To her people, she's not the queen yet, but to the outside world, she's as much a queen as anybody else is. Therefore, she can name herself a guardian. She can't be the chosen one, and therefore she doesn't want to be. Her brother was the chosen one, but she will defend the new chosen one while she also figures out what this is and what it's doing and where her brother is. Is he dead? Is he captured? This is her job, and she will make sure that no other chosen one falls to this creature, swearing on it, living by it. So, she did an act that most Tritons didn't do. She decided to go up to the surface world on her own, taking account that her race don't do very well on the land. So, she decided to do a bit of work on herself to make sure that she could fight properly on land. Trained and made sure that her web feet were not a distraction or a hindrance. Practicing every form of combat that her honor guard could teach her. And Callus Dune swore that the throne would be left for her. He would not allow any noble to take it over. By blood, he would stand by her side even if she wasn't there, making sure that while she is gone, he will make sure that no greedy, gold-hungry noble would take the seat, leaving a bit of relief for her. Yes, her primary objective is to go out to the world and destroy this thing, but she needs a world to come back home to, and this is her world. Her world is Avarice. And she needs to make sure that it's still hers when she returns. That it's still her family's, it is still her blood, and it's still her seat to take. Damn whatever the council says. So she does. After training for so long, she heads out to Heartwind. At this time, many delegates, nobles, kings, and queens are heading their way there. But she had to alert them that unfortunately, due to the passing of her father and mother, they would not be attending. So she had to take a few noble delegates with her as a royal enclave of sorts. A long journey has been had. She has not been attuned to the sun, to the heat, to the dryness, and due to her long journey, she was able to try to acclimate herself as much as possible to this world. But everything about it was odd. Living underwater for so long and then moving your way up into dryness is different. But she was practicing as much as she could to what she understood the land would offer her. Her brother had a sense of honor, and therefore she does too. This isn't more than just revenge. This is an honor for her family. She knew that just returning back to her home would do nothing to appeal to her noble families. But honor and the name of her house, as she represented it, will bring weight to other kingdoms that can help her. Like I said, Alaire Valerian was not an idiot. She knew how to do everything correctly. Being a proper fighter, wielding sword, trident, and whatever weapon is offered to her. The only thing that she was not proficient in was magic. Magic is not very common in Avarice. Not like it doesn't exist, but It is left to those who dedicate their life to it. Magic is hard to find underwater, and therefore only the smartest wizards and warlocks are attuned to the magics. On her way to Heartwind, seeing this world, and she enters into this large, lavish kingdom. Seeing races that she's only seen in books. Taking into account many of these races live with her. She sees elves. There are aquatic elves that live with her, but she's never seen elves of such paleness. She's never seen orcs before. Halflings. Both in strange but amusing factors. Immediately preparing herself for the chance to be the Guardian. She's already prepped with armor upon herself. Royal raiments of her title. The Chosen One herself can choose her guardians. All intents and purposes, the Chosen One does not have to just take whatever guardian's thrown at them. They can choose to disregard them. So Rin had to make sure that she was not turned down. Many guardians have lived their lives trying to be a guardian. Getting rejected by being trained for many years and then get rejected by a Chosen One can ruin their life. She knew this could be a possibility and she would not accept it. She will fight to be the guardian. But on her way there, she heard of a unfortunate happening with the Chosen One. He died. She was concerned and confused. We're late. How did we get here so late? Not only did the Heartwinds send out their Chosen One early, but apparently he was not the Chosen One. They lied. And she found out about this, she found it in amazement. And not only was their human son not the Chosen One, but the Chosen One was not human. She was a Jajasi. And this pleased the Averant. It gave her hope. Maybe changing up the strategy is what makes this work. As she heads to Heartwind with excitement. Heading there and seeing up on this large 50-step area as the king announces his true firstborn, as she sees a burnt skin fire genasi, where she has not seen one before, only water and wind genasis. Hair moving like embers in the wind. She is in amazement, finding that this is promising that she can protect this person. On her way here, she thought, I don't care who it is, I'll protect them. But in this case, this is someone that she would like to protect. Not just given a duty, but an honor. As the first person that asked her to be guardian is Averant. But not just ask, demanding. Seraphina, seeing her, sees in amazement of a race that does not look like the rest. Ears that are not like elves. Skin that's not like humans. The similarities that she has, that she's different from humans, so is Averant, as they lock into each other's eyes and sees, even though it's cold and fire, their differences are similarities. As Seraphina is all too happy to accept her as her first guardian. And the journey continues. Averant's story throughout Campaign 1 is one of tragedy. Many of her family has fallen before she even becomes a guardian. And her story is of revenge. But it eventually turns into a story of tragedy even further. She eventually will figure out what has happened to her brother and what the plague truly is. And it is because these combinations of people is why it will eventually work. But it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And that's why these stories are being told. For any of you that watch our current campaigns, you know how this ends, but you don't know the journey itself. Lair Valerian was the sword and shield to Seraphina. Even though Lair Valerian is not a paladin, she was her knight. The blade to Seraphina. But the similarities they had were all too much. They are both naive to this world. They are both too accustomed to their own world. And therefore, many things that become hilarious to future stories are similar things that they have in common. So many things. So, Lair Valerian O'Shineth, the Triton fighter of Campaign 1. I hope you all enjoyed this session, Episode 4. Lair Valerian was a very popular character, and as you know, if you're watching any of our campaigns, she's still around to this day. She's become much bigger, much grander than what she was. And she plays much important roles in the future, and forever will. But Campaign 1 is as much her story as anybody else's. But many parts of it revolve around her and her brother. So, if you want to know what happens to him, if you want to know what she discovers, if you want to know what this plague is, listen to the next episodes as we will play them in the future, always on Fridays. Now, we don't have specific times we do sessions, but usually around this time is when I'm going to go live. Anywhere between 1:30 to 3 o'clock Central Time on Fridays. Stay tuned next week for the next session. We'll be talking about Gladlin Rosewind and his lead up to be a Guardian. I hope you all enjoy. Make sure you check out the 3 episodes before this. And I can't wait to tell you more stories, lead on into the characters, and talk about the actual campaign itself. Even though it was a shorter one, and it was our first campaign, it was one of our best. So, love you all, thank you for listening, and check out our following streams next week. We have Tuesday, Blades of Bahamut, and Wednesday, we have Star Wars, and Thursdays we have Echoes of Bahamut. So, without further ado, everybody have a good night, have a great weekend.